You are hot.
I am hot, thank you. Hi, everybody, welcome, good morning. This is the workshop for the Landlord Tenant Act, sponsored by your LPG Residents Association. And our guest speakers today are from AAMHO. And AAMHO is our lobbyist group, basically, who keeps an eye on this Landlord Tenant Act.
I know that.
And
I've known that for a long time.
introduces things that are useful for us and helpful, and keeps track of other things that are being introduced that impact the Landlord Tenant Act. For those of you who are new to LPG or this kind of residential situation, you own your home, but you don't own your property. So technically, under the law, you're a tenant, and the Thesman Group is your landlord. So that's why it's not like regular property and the rules that govern, when you sell your property and those kind of things. The Landlord Tenant Act really does govern all of that. So it's important to keep up with it, to have a copy, for you to look at on occasion, and to know when you have an issue, you might look it up in the Tenant Act, or you can even call AAMHO to ask the question. They are not attorneys, they don't represent us individually, but they are there to help us understand. So they do regular training for the Landlord Tenant Act, and we're very fortunate that we are on the schedule for them to be here today. So I'd like to introduce, first of all, the board of your board. I am Margaret Jacoby, and I'm your outgoing president. This is Pam Williams over here. She is your secretary. And Sue Smith on the end is our second vice president. Walt Smiles was here, but he had to leave. He wasn't feeling well. He's our treasurer. And Peggy Marcone is not here as well either. She is our first vice president. So that's your board. You can find our names and contact number on the website. So I'd like to introduce just briefly Pat Schoenig. Pat is here to my right. Pat is the interim president of AAMHO, and as well, she's the membership director. So any questions about membership, Pat is your person to go to. And we have all kinds of flyers. You'll see them on the table, and we have additional copies up here in the front. And then coming with her is Wally Turner. And Wally is a resident at Palmas del Sol East. Is that right, Wally? Okay. Wally's been active in AAMHO for approximately 11 years, I want to say. 16. Okay, great. 16 years. So we have another expert right here. And he's one of us. He's a resident like we are. So he'll have some good information and some experiential things to say. So we will have them each speak briefly. Maybe 15 minutes or so, something like that. About 15 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, and then when they're both done, then we'll take the questions. And we'll have the questioners, please go to the microphone to my right over here, because we want the people watching on YouTube to see who's asking the question and to hear the question as it's being asked. So if you would cooperate and do that. And you can line up there. If there's one person there, you don't have to wait till they're done. You can just go right there, and that will help us move things along more quickly. Once again, I want to thank Larry and his crew back there for streaming for us and recording and setting up the microphones, the TVs, and all of that. So people in the room here can see the TV if you don't want to just look right at us up here.
Remind me to tell you about
So thank you all for being here. Thank you to you folks on YouTube. We're so happy that you tuned in to watch. So without me saying any more, I will have more at the end. But right now, I will introduce Pat Schoenig from AAMHO.
I have to take my mask off because I have a lung problem and I can't talk to you with that on. Also, every time I take them on and off, it pulls off my hearing aids, and man, that's really a disaster. When you moved into the park, you would have had to sign a lease or rental agreement. And with that, they should have given you a policy, a statement, and your rules and regulations. It's important to keep them and have them so you can look at them, because often when you come across something that's wrong and you feel about, you need to look at that and see how it's stated, because actually the laws are the same for the park owners, the managers, and us. We'd like to believe that we're always right, but that doesn't always run true. Many times it does. When you do that with the application, they do go for a credit report and your proof of income and verification and stuff, so they know you can afford to stay within the park. The landlord should also disclose to you the name and address of the owners, name and address, phone number, how to contact anybody in the office in case of an emergency. And also, if they have a management company that looks over your park, they also have to disclose a number and contact for that. So if you've had this same owner for several years, I take it, so I don't think you're running into what I'm seeing in many of the parks. There's a lot of small parks that were privately owned, that were sold out for big corporations out of California and out of Illinois and around. Arizona is one of the 3 states that have a Landlord Tenant Act to protect their people. Illinois and California do not. And so we're finding, for instance, in Tucson, where I live, one of the big conglomerates out of California put in their newsletter that they give to all the people in all of their parks, not the park newsletter, but a corporation newsletter. And in it, it said that on the 2nd day of the month, your rent was due and it had to be paid then. Now, the Landlord Tenant Act, your rent is due on the 1st, and you have 5 days to get your rent in to have it taken care of. Now, that means you have until closing time of the office on the 6th to have your bill to them. So some people think it's the 5th, but you can get by on the 6th. However, this particular company in the 2 parks they own in Tucson sent out their billing for October on September 30th. And their newsletter said after the 2nd, their rent was late. Most people didn't get their information in time to take care of it. So there are issues out there, and one of the things that I'm working on this year with legislation is I would like to see that they make these park owners and managers take our certification class, because the one that we called about this said, so I don't care. And you know, they're not held responsible. Yes, you can go after them. It takes time, money, patience. But in the meantime, there are people whose rent was charged the late fee. Some places ask for a security deposit. Very few do, and I'll tell you why. With a security deposit, if they took one from you, they have to pay you 5% interest on all the time that you lived there on that 5%. So in other words, if you lived in the park 16 years like Wally did, they're going to have to pay quite a bit of interest. Anyway, that's, one of the things they talk about is right of first refusal. That right of first refusal normally is if someone wants to move their home out of the park. If you have a bid from somebody to buy that home, they have to match that money if they want to keep it and keep their lot filled. One of the latest things that came up now was the Caregivers Bill went through. With the Caregivers Bill, they used to be able to make you go and have, a lot of the parks tried at least, making you have that person checked out and stuff. Now, anybody that's working with healthcare that says you need a caregiver can verify for that. And if you have to have a caregiver in your home 24 hours a day, they are allowed to live there for no extra rent. And, but the thing is, you have to have the park know they're there and have them not on the title or anything, but on the lease that they're there in that park so that they know what's going on. Those people do not have rights to go swimming and that type of thing unless you go with them. And if you go with them, they can do that. But in most cases, people who are on home health care are pretty much bedridden and down and need a lot of care. Sometimes I know we have one in our park that is taking 2 of the family members so that someone is there all the time. So one's working another job part-time in the daytime and is always there at night. And, they work their schedules around so that somebody's there 24 hours. They cannot charge you any extra rent, but you do have to make sure that the park knows. Okay, and then if there's a termination or non-renewal of a rental agreement, the landlord shall specify the reason or reasons for the termination or non-renewal of any tenancy in the mobile home park. The reason or reasons relied on for the termination or non-renewal shall be in writing with specific facts. I don't know if you have much of that, but there are people who are running into, they've had 1430s for some things that they did that were in non-compliance with their lease, and the park did not want to renew their rental. You have to, if you get some type of a notice like a 1430, you need to study it carefully, correct whatever is wrong, and then take it to the office to have them sign that you corrected it. Now, if you can't take, I don't want you to take a bag of your weeds up to the office to show them you pulled them. What you need to do is take a photo and take it up to them and have them sign off on that 1430 that you got, or any other issues that you might have gotten it for. One of the non-compliances is non-rent, and they do have the right to evict people if they do not pay their rent. In most cases, I think you can go to the office if you've got some type of a problem and ask them to give you permission to have another 15 days, 30 days, or whatever. Most people will be pretty conscientious and work with you over that, but then you have to stick to it and get it taken care of. One thing that's bad is repeated violations. When people repeatedly violate the law, they will be sending you notices and work with things to get people evicted. Now, we had one park that on one violation, they were going to try to evict the people. The law says you get 3 warnings in a year. That's why it's important to sign off. If you've had a warning, so that you don't build up 3 warnings, because if they have 3 written warnings in their possession, they actually can get you evicted. Many of the things that come under rules and regulations in the park are additional vehicle parking, conduct by the residents and guests, feeding feral or wild animals, insurance for your home and your vehicles, the laundry, lot maintenance, motor vehicles with current license and operable, pets and qualified animals, recreational facility use, speeding by any vehicle, including not limited to golf carts, bicycles, cars, motorcycles, or trucks, storage facilities, traffic signs, and trash. Now, I've been in 2 of your parks over Las Palmas East and here, and you have wonderful parks. I get out and travel all over the state, and I can tell you, you can't imagine some of the stuff that I've seen out there. One park, they were clamping down on speeding. The speed limit was 10 miles an hour, and I wouldn't have wanted to go over 10 because it was full of speed bumps. But there was one sign when you come in the front gate, and it was below a sign that says, vehicles will be towed if they're left parked on the street. And that was the only one in a park of 300 units. But I also drove around and watched, and there were 15 signs that said they can tow your vehicle. You're very lucky. You have good management and owners here. If you have something that you have a question with, Margaret could probably help you. I think she's pretty knowledgeable about all of the laws and stuff. Or Wally is over at Palmas del Sol East, and believe me, he knows the Landlord Tenant Act inside and out. The landlord shall adopt the rules and regulations and enforce them. Their purpose is to promote the convenience, safety, and welfare of the tenants on the premises, preserve the landlord's property from abusive use, preserve or upgrade the quality of the mobile home park, and to make fair distribution of services and facilities. They are reasonably related to the purpose for which they're adopted. They apply to all tenants on the premises in a fair manner. And everybody should have been given a copy of the rules and regulations when they enter into their rental agreement. And if those are changed at any time, they have to give you 30 days notice on what they're changing. If the policy is changed, it's 60 days notice. For rent raises, it's 90 days notice. Now, we have one park right now, and I've got to do some checking on it, but they had a large raise on January 1st, and then they got a raise June 1st. Originally, their raises were once a year on June 1st. However, last year, due to COVID, they didn't put out a raise. So the one they put out January 1st, they claimed was last year's. So I don't know, Wally, what do you think? How legal is that? I got to dig into it, and believe me, when I'm up on the road 2 parks a day, I'm not finding time.
I don't know if it's legal or not. I think it's worth looking at. Sure.
Yeah. Anyway, I am going to check with our lobbyist and see if she can update me on that. I'm a little green at this coming out and talking to this for you as president. I've been the membership director for the last 7 or 8 years. And at a meeting in September, our president and our legislative directors resigned. No notice, no reason. They just got up, opened the board meeting, and said, I resign, and walked out. I am now the president along with membership director, which are probably two of the heaviest loads. And right now I'm working with the lobbyist, trying to get ready to get our new laws, what we want to take before legislator this year. So I will be meeting with her the first of the week and then meeting with MHCA, which is the Park Owners Association, to get their thought in it. And so right now I'm probably working 50 hours a week and on the road. I live in Tucson, so it's lots of moving around. Be sure that the park has an emergency number for like, I know they don't want you calling the managers and stuff for little stuff, but there has to be some type of an emergency number listed so that if a water main breaks or a transformer or something goes out with the electricity, it's very, very important that you're able to get a hold of somebody. And I know parks that that's not true. So 911 is for emergency calls at your home or any type of an accident or anything that happens. But they need to have someone that can take care of a water break or a power outage. If a tenant dies and a surviving joint tenant or contenant continues as the tenant, as the same rights, privileges, and liabilities as if the surviving tenant were the original tenant, with the additional right to terminate the rental agreement, giving 60 days written notice to the landlord within 60 days after the death of the tenant. If a tenant is a sole owner, you need to be sure that you have someone that your home is going to go to or some information, because well, in my park, we had a guy that had absolutely no contact to anyone, and he passed away, and he was in his home 3 days before somebody was suspicious and called for a security check to come in and check on him. And it took the park 60 days to find someone that was family to him, and they were back in Texas. The guy not only owned one home, but he owned two. He had a beautiful double wide, decided after his wife died that he wanted a single wide next door that was a lovely home, so he bought it. 10 days after he bought it, he had the other house listed for sale, but he passed away. So there sat two perfectly good homes with nothing anybody could do with them. And it took the park way over a year to get things straightened out. And you know, you don't want that happening in your neighborhood. There are health and safety notices. One of the things that I find, I was in a park on Tuesday night that the park had closed up the laundry room. Now, this is an older park with a lot of single wides, and they went and shut down the laundry, and now those people have to go out to find some place to use it. They boarded up the windows and everything on it. And when I left the park at 10 minutes to 10 to drive back to Tucson, I told Wally there was no lighting by the gate where you come in. And it was off of the 101 and University Avenue. Now, if you don't think that, and no security gate, if you don't think that is a health and safety issue. So we're going to try to get some papers filed on that. I guess basically I would like to be open to have you ask questions. One of the things I want to tell you is I brought with me some of the Landlord Tenant Acts that we used last year. As of September 30th, The two changes that were made in legislature last year are in the new Landlord Tenant Act. I have some of them, and they are $5 a piece. If you want one of the current or the former Landlord Tenant Acts, they're in the pile right on the front there, and you can help yourself to one of those. We did get the new ones changed and made up, but we do have to charge $5. It's 52 printed pages to have to take the time to print up and take care of. So do you have any other questions of me? Or I'd like to have, be sure that Wally talks to you because he has a mountain of information.
We're taking questions after.
Okay.
So thank you, Pat. And Wally's going to step up. And as Pat said, Wally has a lot of information and he's a resident like we are. So he has that perspective as a resident. So Wally, thank you for being here.
Good morning. I'm Wally Turner, and I live just down the street. We've lived there for 16 years. My wife just passed away last year, so lots of changes. By living in a park like we do, you know, you think that. Is that better? Whoop. How about that? Good. Yeah, so we've lived in a park for 16 years. I've been a member of AAMHO for 15 or 16 years. And I became a member because sometimes the landlords or the managers are not doing what they should do. So I got involved. I was in the insurance business before, and I thought that there ought to be a spokesman in the park for the residents. So that's how I got involved. We've had 5 managers since I've been there. Some been good, some not so good. So if you get a good one, keep them. If you don't, then complain. Is there any veterans here, by the way? Any veterans? Thank you for your service. The park that we live in there's I think 420 homes in our park, and there's a lot of new people coming in, so they're not aware of AAMHO. AAMHO is a benefit to us because they represent at the legislature of the laws that affect us. So we have an input through our organization to directly affect us. So that's a good thing. That's why you should be a member, because it's something that you don't see every day. You know, you think that what have they done for me? What's AAMHO done for me? Well, it's what you don't see that it's important. Behind the scenes are people working with the legislature to protect us on our rights, and also to write legislation to effectively make it right. And there's some bad legislation which our director goes over with the legislatures on the laws, and so they review them. And so the bad laws we try to get eliminated, which has been pretty effective. The changes in AAMHO are Eileen Green, which was our president, is no longer with us, like Pat had said. And a lot of people say, well, he just left. In my perspective, in working in the park, that was a good thing. So sometimes changes are good. I think that we're all affected with changes in the last couple of years. So keep it up with AAMHO. How many members here are AAMHO members? Why aren't the rest of you? And I'm saying that from living in the park. You should, because we're the ones of the AAMHO people and the people that represent AAMHO are all volunteers. You know, I've done this for 16 years and it's all volunteer work. I helped a lot of people, answer a lot of questions. I'm kind of the go-between between the resident and management. So, you know, if you go to talk to the manager, have somebody with you. It's always good to have somebody there to verify what's said and done. I'm trying to think of some things that I've done in the past number of years. The issues that have come up with the residents, like the electric meter, the water meter, the sewerage, have had issues, and the park has said that it's the responsibility of the resident to take care of those. Well, I got involved and it was the park's responsibility. So over the years,
All the things they've done.
somebody made a list of all the things that I've done.
No,
Oh, no, this is
AAMHO is brought before legislature and adopted.
okay, yeah, these are things that, you know, that AAMHO has done with the legislature, and those are up here also. But there's things in the park that the management said that it's the responsibility of the resident to take care of it. And that was turned around because AAMHO got involved. And probably over the years that I've been involved, it's probably saved the residents well over $20,000 in a cost that was going to be, you know, put on their shoulders from management. So it's good to have somebody represent AAMHO in your park. It's always good to have volunteers for AAMHO. It doesn't mean that you have to work up to be president. You can just put in a couple hours and do a couple of things and get together and talk to your neighbors about the importance of being represented. So we'd like to have you there and sign up. And if you got questions, I'm sure we'll have time to answer. And I'm not an attorney, so what I say, don't go to court with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Wally, and thanks, Pat, again. If you have questions for either one, please, again, step over to the microphone and don't be shy. I mean, the reason we want you there is we want to hear what your question is. And so the people at home watching on YouTube can also hear what the question is instead of repeating them. So one of the things that I wanted to say is that Sue Smith is our AAMHO person on the board here. So she takes care of, you know, making sure that we have literature for you. And if there's questions, she, you know, she'll be happy to take those and send them to AAMHO. We don't have an official representative like Wally is, but it sure would be great if someone has an interest in doing that, to work directly with AAMHO and be, you know, a representative from LPG to AAMHO. So I would like somebody to ask a question. I mean, you must have something floating around in your head. On the tables, you'll see some handouts, and the list that Pat referred to of the accomplishments of AAMHO is on there, and it's pretty impressive. AAMHO in 1975 was a passage of the Landlord Tenant Act. And so AAMHO's been involved actively since about 1979 with, you know, interfacing with the legislature to bring to their attention things that are not really helpful to residents here, and to change some of the things that have been detrimental to residents living in communities like ours. So if you get a chance, pick that up. If it's, there's only one on your table, there are more copies up here. So Bud is standing there ready to ask a question, and direct it to one of those people so they could get up to the mic, Bud, okay? Thank you.
I'm not sure which one of you would answer this. I own the house, of course, that's on the land. I don't own the land. However, my question is that if there is a problem with the structure of, excuse me, something on the land, whose responsibility is it to correct? The specifics on this are the driveway that goes up to the house and into the garage. When it rains, water hits that driveway and runs into the garage. Anybody that is in the concrete business and designs driveways should know that it should lean away from the garage, not have water collect there and then run into the garage. My question is, who's responsible for the correcting of that problem? The location of the improperly constructed cement is outside of the garage. It's right in front of the garage where rain falls and runs into the garage. I don't know which one of you would like to respond to that.
Thanks for the good question. How long have you lived in a home?
22 years.
Okay,
When I moved in there, this building did not exist.
well, the way that I've interpreted what the landlord tenant thing says, and also the architectural standards that our park has, that the water that's supposed to run away from the house anywhere from 1% to 3% away from the house. So if that includes the driveway and it was built that way, and it's been that long, I think that you're probably going to have an uphill battle, because I've had somewhat the same problem with my driveway, and still not corrected. They attribute it to, the landlord tenant thing, and then you say that it's grandfathered in, and it just went through a whole litany of things. But the best thing to do is write everything down, present it to, management, and ask them, this is their responsibility, and see what they say.
Yeah. If it falls into my responsibility, then I have to get involved with modifying something that they created. And I guess I would have to find out who can give me that permission. Would that be the local manager here, or would that have to go to California?
Well, eventually, to go through the local management here, there's also the two vice presidents live in your park, and they would get involved. They're the ones that I dealt with, Corinne McWilliams.
I know her.
And she's kind of the mouthpiece for Thesman. And then Todd, I forget his last name,
Lutz.
So
Todd
anyway,
Lutz.
yeah, he's in charge of the construction and stuff. That's who I presented my case to originally, and it got the shuffle. So it's not going to be easy.
No.
But what I would, and I talked to Corinne and I talked to Todd about it, is that the residents should have an inspection done on a house prior to them moving in. A private party or private, somebody that's not related to the park. So that way, the defects, because what I was told that when you move into the house, you say, and they tell you or have told people that the park's been inspected by their people. Well, come to find out, it's just a cursory inspection. They just kind of walk around the perimeter, and they don't go underneath. They don't go on a roof. They don't look at wiring. They don't do anything, and so they don't look at the water flow.
Yeah, they would have to be there when it rains to find out that this
Right.
exists.
Right.
And
And
I'm
take
sure they're
pictures.
not going to have an inspector standing outside the house waiting for it to rain.
Well, they got levels and stuff to do that, but when it does rain, take pictures.
I can do that. I have had a concrete contractor look at the house, look at the situation, and they have not come back with a response. It would be tearing up a goodly section of the concrete and repouring it. Corinne McWilliams has offered an alternative is putting a speed bump just outside the garage door, which would then put a block for any of the rain that would run towards the garage, which would be a lot cheaper. However, putting new concrete on top of old concrete is not necessarily a good situation. It's hard to get them to bond together to make a good seal.
They got adhesives that will take care of most of that, I think. But anyway, you got to start from the beginning and write a letter, and put all the things down that you say happen. Take pictures when it's available, and go from there.
Okay, thank you.
Did I answer your question? Not very good. Anyway, yeah, but there's all different kinds of problems, and one thing to look at is, we didn't do it when we bought our house. Didn't have an outside inspector come and inspect. So when you buy the house, you buy it as is. So, then you're responsible from then. They can tell you, well, this was not right when you moved in, but now it's your responsibility. So you have to correct it. In our park, they don't allow awnings. Well,
you buy the house, you don't buy the land, and anything that is on the land should be the responsibility of the people that own the land.
Well,
I do not have the authority nor the right to actually.
right, but after you moved in,
Thanks, Bud.
then it's you accepted the responsibilities of the slope of the property. You're supposed to. They should have told you that the slope of the property is not correct. Well, because it wasn't inspected, now you have to fight. And I have sympathy for you, but because I kind of went through the same thing. But in our park, it's an older park also, and the slope of the land is supposed to be anywhere from 1% to 3% the grade away from the house. Well, as years go by, the land settles and people re-landscape and plant trees, so it affects the drainage. So the park is not responsible for that because you didn't bring that up when you bought the house. So that's why it's good to have it inspected by an outside, credible, certified people. Did I talk too much?
No, not at all.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And thanks, Bud, for asking the question. Unfortunately, when Gail and I bought our house too, we did not realize that we should have had an inspection. We've bought real estate in California and here and in Hawaii, and they tell you, have a home inspection. Here, when we bought it, nobody told us that we should have a home inspection or could have a home inspection. So if you know folks who are considering moving in, please tell them before you sign anything, have a home inspection. The real estate office here is not telling us that. They're not giving us that option or giving us that information. And Wally's right. Once you sign the lease and you have not had an inspection, whatever problem exists on your property becomes yours, becomes your responsibility. And that's how the owners can get by with not fixing something like Bud was mentioning. So, if you know some new people, make sure they know that they ought to have a home inspection from a certified, credible home inspector.
Usually those costs are less than $300.
Right. It's a minimal cost when you think about what you're spending to buy the house that you're buying and the subsequent rental that you'll be paying down the line. So good question, Bud. Thank you so much. And Wally, thanks for your responses. Anybody else have anything they want to bring up? 1 second. Step to the mic, please. And then you go step to the mic. Go behind her.
I want to introduce myself.
Okay, go there. Go right there.
All right. Good morning. It's great to see people are willing to get out before 9 a.m. after their breakfast and a coffee. My name is Ken Stossel, okay? I'm a director of a sister organization to AAMHO. It's called AAMPRO, all right? Association for the Education of Manufactured Park Model and RV Homes. For us to obtain funds, we've had to begin this organization so that we could become a 501, what is it, C3. That's the only way that we can accept donations like in kind, because people say, if I wanted to give you a donation, is it tax deductible? Now it will be through our sister organization. I'm here because I've been a resident for 10 and a half years at Dolce Vita down the street. I have a lot of friends that are in Wally's Park, and I introduced them to Wally's Park. And then after I retired, I chose to go out further to Dolce Vita. I have a situation that's very unique. Anybody know what a siso tree is? SISSOO? There's a gentleman. They were put in here years ago because they're fast growing. They bloom out. My neighbor is 25 to 30 feet from my property line, and her siso tree was trimmed. She took excellent care of her property, but the root system, looking for moisture, continued to grow. It's grown 35 to 40 feet to my patio, underneath my patio, and I've brought that to the attention of management. Management's story is, you're responsible to maintain the lot. We own the property, but you agreed to maintain the lot. I said, I don't have to maintain that lady's tree. It's over here. So finally, they cut the tree down. They were supposed to drill holes in the trunk and poison it, which got lost in translation, okay? So in the meantime, this root system is still active, and it's looking for water, and it's continuing to grow. Okay, our management, I'm getting ahead of myself. We were privately owned over 10 years ago. That was sold to an insurance company for 5 years. The management company that they chose to run that park took the money out of it and did very little for the park. So now you got a property that's 15, 17 years old, is slowly deteriorating. Now we've got a third owner, which has been in there just under a year, ELS. Deep pockets. They own a number of parks here and in Tucson and all over the country. They're the only people that seem to be proactive as far as bringing the park up to a higher standard and working with the various groups of people. I'm associated with a couple other organizations within the park, but it's been pointed out to me on more than one occasion, when you sign that lease, you do not own the land, and I have no issue with that. But in my lease, it says I will be responsible for maintaining the lot. And so this is where you've got the gray area that you've got to work with. So as far as the gentleman with his driveway, I have the same thing. My drive is actually taller than what my garage slab is. The only thing I can do is cut out 3 or 4 feet of that and change the grade. But I've put that pebble tech or whatever you call that. So I would have to do not only the concrete work, but I'd have to have that all recoated. So it could probably run me a couple $1,000. Is the issue that great? No, I'm just going to let the water sneak in under the door by a couple inches and not worry about it. But anyways, our organization, AAMHO and AAMPRO, is all run by volunteers. And we really take issue with trying to make sure that the people that we come in contact, we associate with, understand the rights that they should have. If you talk to Pat privately, some of these parks don't care about you. All you are is that monthly check coming in, ka-ching, ka-ching, and that's about it. This is an excellent park. Where Wally lives is a beautiful park, but I chose to go elsewhere. But the issue I had is I put a deposit in here 10.5 years ago. And when I looked at my house, there's a crack running down the center of the garage slab. I said, what's going on here? The salesman says, oh, that's normal expansion and contraction. You should go over to the construction office. They'll tell you that. I went over to the construction office. The guy told me, I don't know what he's talking about. We don't get involved with that. So therefore, I had to step back. But the thing is, you want people that want to offer help and have your best interest at heart, because we're all of a common nature. Retirees, trying to make the ends meet, trying to do right by what we sign up for on the program, maintaining our houses. This park is beautiful, but this park is built out. The park I live in, they're still putting houses in there, so we've got construction issues. But other than that, you have to respect what some people are willing to do to make sure that you're aware of what the laws are. And let me tell you, down at the legislature, it's give and take. And the big guns over here with all the money like to take it. And we don't want to give it. We want to fight for what we feel is fair and equitable for everybody. So that's where we're going to leave it. But you do have a wonderful park here. I'll tell you, I'm sorry I didn't move in here, but it just didn't work out. I didn't like that garage floor, and that guy wouldn't give me any answers.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
Well, thank you. And I do want to tell folks that as an organization, the Resident Association has contributed to AAMHO over the years. We generally send a once-a-year donation from the money that we collect. Your donations to our organization, we do take a small portion and send it over to AAMHO. So we appreciate what you're doing over there, and we appreciate the educational efforts that go on through that organization. So thank you. Pam, you had a question?
I just have a comment, what Margaret and Wally were talking about as far as having a home inspection. We had a home inspection against the advice of the office when we moved in, but don't take their word who you should use. As we turned out, it was a good old boy that was part of their club. So make sure you get an independent, not recommended by the office if you get a home inspection.
Well, make sure we can hear you though. Thank you so much.
It's my understanding that home inspectors are now licensed. So if you're looking for one, ask the man what his certifications are and if he is licensed. They go through a certain training, a learning program to get their license. Okay, that's a big help right there, number one. Number two, ask them how many units, as far as a mobile or manufactured home, they have inspected in the last 6 months. Because a lot of them are house inspectors. And I call it the drive-by. You know, $300. The guy goes out to his truck, he's got a computer, he prints out this inspection sheet, and he never does his due diligence. And then when he's gone, that can work against you if you find some inequities in a property that weren't identified, because you're trusting him to tell you what's right and what's wrong. Thank you.
Good point. Thanks very much. I have one question for Pat and Wally. On the new Landlord Tenant Act that has the caregiver stipulations in it, can you tell us exactly what the new change to the law was?
I could read you the new law. I briefly told you that you didn't have to go through as much stuff getting a doctor's written thing, but here's the law. Pursuant to state and federal fair housing laws, a resident who has a disability as defined in Section 41-1491 may have one or more persons occupy the resident's mobile home to provide necessary live-in health care, personal care, or supportive services if the care or services are necessary to afford the resident with a disability an equal opportunity to use and enjoy the dwelling. The landlord shall not charge a fee for the persons rendering live-in health care, personal care, or supportive services. The persons rendering live-in health care, personal, yeah, I go back over here, have no rights of tenancy, and any agreement between the residents and the persons rendering live-in health care, personal care, or supportive services does not modify any term or condition of the rental agreement between the landlord and the tenant. The persons rendering live-in health care, personal care, or supportive services shall comply with the rules and regulations of the mobile home park. And what it did was actually bring that in, that was the federal law. And the law that was in the Landlord Tenant Act before stated that you had to have a written thing from your doctor and all kinds of stuff. Well, you know, if you broke a hip and you went into rehab and you come home from there, then you have to schedule appointments to try to get in and find somebody to sign up paperwork and whatever. The way it is now, anybody that worked in that facility and can state to the family that you need someone in your home with you 24/7 or at least 16 hours a day, that they are permitted to do that. And that decision can be made by any type of a person that's a healthcare person.
It's in the new
Right.
landlord tenant thing.
Right.
Right there.
Yeah, thank you for that. I know you had mentioned it briefly in your talk, but I wanted folks to understand what the new change is. If you are in that situation, someone in your home needs that kind of care, or your neighbor, you have family or friends that are in that situation, you might want to purchase a copy of the new Landlord Tenant Act, which has that language in it. The ones that you can take for no charge does not have that language. And this new language took effect just recently. So if you're in that situation and your manager has not adhered to these new fair housing regulations, you might want to take that copy and bring it up to the office. Okay, but I just wanted to clarify that. So thank you so much. Anybody else have a question, a comment? I have found this to be very useful, especially if you're new to the park and you haven't had this information before. And when you moved in, you were not given a copy of the Landlord Tenant Act. You can always look on the AAMHO website, and they have the act listed there. You can scroll through, or you can take a free copy right now of the previously effective document. So if nobody else has questions or comments, all right, one step up there, please.
I was greeted at the door the other day by a woman, and she was asking me if we are responsible, we know we're responsible for the Ballard lights, of keeping them painted. Her light went out. She changed the bulb. It never did come on. And now they're believing it's the electrical part. Are we responsible for the electrical part of the Ballard light? Because that's a big expense when it goes to that.
So the lights where?
The Ballard light out
The
in the
Ballard
front that
lights in
has
the
your
front of the
address
homes
on it.
are illuminated and show your house number. And we're responsible for keeping them painted. We're responsible for replacing the light bulbs. We're responsible if the panels get cracked or faded. we have to pay for new panels. The management has insisted that that is our responsibility. This person that Gail's referring to now has a ballast or a more specific electrical problem with that bollard light. And we're just wondering if that, if that is something that needs to be maintenance by the management, or if we are responsible for that kind of an expense. So Wally, I don't know if you have any insight into that or not.
Well, in my perspective, if
But
they,
Wally, can you step up? I'm sorry.
my perspective, if they installed it, then they should have the responsibility of maintaining it. If it doesn't work and everything, then if they say that it's your responsibility, take it out. See what they say then. I bet they'll say, no, you can't take it out. Well, then they should fix it. But the thing to start with is write a letter and propose it, and then go from there. If you're blowing smoke in the wind, then it's not going to get you anyplace. But a letter starts the thing moving, and then ask for a response within so many days, just like they do you. So, question?
I'm sorry. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I have to have you go to the microphone.
We have protocol here. Right. It's a good thing. And we need a pause.
I don't like talking in public. Our bollard lights are plugged in under the front of your house by where your bollard light is. And when we replaced some flooring in our house, the pounding on the floor disconnected that plug-in because it goes like this to the bottom of your house. So if you're having that issue, that would be the very first place I'd look. It may be just as simple as your plug-in has fallen out of the outlet. It's underneath the house. So if your bollard light is out here, go directly to the front of your house, and you've got those crawl space holes that come up. May not be the one you can get in. You might have to go in from the opposite end of the house like we do at our house, but it's right there. And all it is essentially a big long extension cord that goes out to that bollard light underground. So just a suggestion.
Also, if you don't have your architectural standards, they should have that implemented into the new standards. If these lights are just been put in the park or so, that should be dictated by the architectural standards as far as who's responsible and who is not. Because if it's attached to your house and your electric, then you have responsibility up to a point. But from there, it's a good question to ask management, and it should be in the architectural standards, who's responsible.
My question is, on the Landlord Tenant Act, are they supposed to, management, when you sign your lease and all that? The management on the Landlord Tenant Act, are they to give you a full copy of that when you sign your lease and? Okay.
Summary is about 18 pages. The book was 52.
Ours,
The answer to the question is that the manager is supposed to give you a summary of the Landlord Tenant Act. So when you get your new leases, whenever that is, make sure that there's a summary of the Landlord Tenant Act in that packet.
at least 18 pages, because when we got ours, it was just 2 or 3 blurps on 1 or 2, 3 pages, maybe. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we have a 9-page summary that we received in 2017 when we moved in. I don't know how many of you have moved in since then, and did you get a copy, but you should have a copy of the Landlord Tenant Act. Okay, thank you all. I want to thank everybody who's here. There's still coffee and donuts there. You can help yourself. Those of you who are on YouTube, thank you so much for being there. If you're looking at the recorded version, I hope you'll find that you're finding it interesting. I want to remind you, next Thursday, November 4th, is our annual meeting of the Resident Association and its election of new board members. We have 2 vacancies and we have 2 candidates. So please come out and vote. If you can't be there, and you folks on YouTube, you're welcome to download a copy of the absentee ballot that's on our website. And you can mail that, and you put it in the US mail to the LPGRA, and we are number 666. That we have a mailbox over in the mailroom, and it's number 666. And you put it in US mail. There's a ballot box in the activities office where you can drop your absentee ballot if you don't want to mail it. But we have to have it by 5 p.m. on Wednesday prior to the meeting next Thursday. But please come out and vote, support the new candidates who will be new board members, just like you've supported all of us up until this time. So thanks once again to everybody for being here and for tuning in on YouTube. Thank you and have a great rest of the day.